Hey, what's up guys? For coming at you with a brand new Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile, and today we're going to take a look at my updated Traptrix deck profile, taking into account the two new cards that were recently announced coming out in the next OCG main set. So if you want to take a look at those two in more detail, I did do a video on those, which I'll put in the description of this video. If you like this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and considering subbing it to the channel as well. Leave your thoughts below on this video, and please remember, two of these cards in this deck have not actually been released yet, so this is more of a preemptive sort of deck to show you guys what I've currently been up to with the deck. Now that's out of the way, let's jump into it, and hopefully you guys do enjoy the profile. Starting off with our monsters, we have 3 copies of Traptrix Mantis. When she's normal summoned, we can go ahead and search for any Traptrix monster we want and add it to our hand. When she's on the field, a quick effect, we can use her to bounce a set spell trap card we control, and if we do, we can set another one. Obviously, we can't use them the turn we set them if we use this effect, because we are resetting the trap cards and the quick play spells, but definitely has a lot of uses. We can use it if our opponent tries to remove one of our back row, but it also works really well with Diana's negative effect, where if the trap hole we bring back would be banished, we can add that trap hole to our hand instead. Also allows us to get guaranteed activations of our Sarah, being able to set extra trap holes from the deck. 3 copies of Traptrix Mermello. When she's normal summoned, we go ahead and shoot her for any whole normal trap card we want from our deck. We only run 5, but in a deck like this, I think that's perfectly fine. When she is summoned, mandatory effect, we target a spell trap our opponent controls and destroy it. This is a mandatory activation, so even if our opponents don't have one, we still get to use the effect. Of course, will trigger our Traptrix Sarah. 3 copies of Traptrix Diona. Some people may play this at 2. I think this is fine at 3 because it does help us bring a monster back from the graveyard, and she's basically a 1 monster Utopia double as long as we have a Traptrix monster in the graveyard. Speaking of which, when she is normal summoned, we can target a Traptrix monster in our graveyard and special summon it in defense mode. Sadly, we can't bring back our 2 link monsters as they cannot go to defense mode. If she's special summoned, we can target a whole normal trap in our graveyard and set it to our field. If we do not use it by the end of the next turn, however, it is banished, but thankfully we do have Mantis who can bounce the card in response to the effect, so we don't have to worry about losing the card. We have 2 copies of Traptrix Gina. This is one of the new monsters we have. So her effect, who has 2 effects, which can only be used as a hard once per turn. The first effect is you can send a set spell trap, trap you control to the graveyard to special summon her from your hand. And then her other effect is if you have no cards in your spell and trap card zone, you can banish her from your graveyard, then target the whole normal trap in your graveyard and set it to your field. This card is absolutely fantastic because it lists any trap. It doesn't have to be a trap hole. And thankfully, this deck is more so becoming open to normal traps as well as just trap holes. So very great extender for this deck. And easily to get on the field with both Mantis and Mermello, especially if you open up with a trap hole. And Mantis, you can get this out. If you open up with her and Mermello, you can get her out as well. Because of Ash Blossom, it's always pretty standard. Now, of course, there are other Traptrix monsters you can run in your pure variant if you want. Atrax is still pretty decent in 1800 beat stick and being able to activate whole normal traps from your hand. If you're going down a pure trap hole variant, feel free to run her because the ability to activate trap holes from your hand can be really funny, and your opponent cannot negate the activations of your normal traps. So in certain situations, especially if you know your opponent's playing heavy trap negation, feel free to side her into the deck because she can be really useful in certain situations. Spells, starting off with our generic spells. Monster Reborn, always to bring one back. Call by the Grave, even though it's at 1, is still a very useful card. Double or Nothing for our finisher Utopia double, and Terraforming to search a field spell. Deck does run 3 Mystic Mine. Obviously, as soon as Traptrix gets their own field spell, Mystic Mine is going out of the deck for me, and then we're putting in the Traptrix field spell. Mystic Mine just works with this deck. I don't know what to say. It just works with this archetype. It slows the game down. Traptrix like playing a slow game. They can spam pretty heavily now. So a lot of time, you won't actually need this card. It is there just in case you do need the stall game. In more casual games, you could easily side this out for more Traptrix monsters if you wanted to, or cards like Naturia's Sacred Tree. There are lots of cards you can side this out for. It is a target for Metaverse, so Metaverse is a really great normal trap that works with this deck, so we can add Mystic Mine to our hand. Yeah, it's the only card I'm not super happy with in this deck, but it works. Copies of Pot of Desires. Again, we have a lot of redundancy in our deck because our Link monsters are really easy to summon, only needing like 1 Traptrix monster and then like 1 insect, 2 insect and or plant monsters. So not really hard to summon our link monsters, and our XDs are just 2 level 4. More traps. Let's start things off, of course, with the trap holes. 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole and 3 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole. Bottomless Trap Hole is not the original trap hole, but is definitely the most iconic trap hole that people will know. When your opponent summons a monster, if they have 1500 or more attack, you can destroy them banished. And then Floodgate also will flip them face down, and they cannot activate their cannot change their battle positions. So obviously Floodgate being the better of the 2, but if you're going to be running any 5 specific trap holes, I do think main deck wise 2 Bottomless and 3 Floodgate are perfectly fine. You can cut Bottomless down to 1 if you want to, but you definitely want to be running 3 Floodgate trap hole. There are so many other trap holes that you have access to that you can use, like Time Space. If you want to, you definitely will be citing the Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, especially probably 1 copy. Of course, these all work with our Traptrix Sarah. 3 copies of Phantom Knight's Shade Brigadine. This card, you guys know the combo. Yes, it's not a Traptrix monster, but this card is just, it might as well be a Traptrix monster. Synergizes so well with Sarah and this archetype, it's not even funny. When it's activated, you can activate it the turn you set it if you have no traps in your graveyard. So just special free level 4 monster, and then of course we'll trigger Sarah, and then you can bring a Traptrix monster out from the deck. So you have 2 level 4s right there. Absolutely fantastic. You know, use 1 per turn, but if you do open up 2, you can use Sarah's effect. You can special summon 1, and then you can send the other one for Traptrix Gina's effect. Copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device, just solid removal trap. Bounces a card on the field back to the hand and triggers Sarah. If you're really in a pinch, this card's great because you can use it to target your own Sarah. So Sarah can still be targeted by traps, she's just unaffected by them. So you can still just use these traps on your own monsters if you really need to just help yourself extend. To the front. So I really like this card. A lot of people probably don't, probably think it's a little too slow. It special summons a monster from our graveyard in defense. So yes, in most decks, this would be kind of meh, but it is a normal trap, so it triggers Sarah, so we get the activation of Sarah as well. 2 Lost Wind, nice negate. Again, there are better negates in the game, but this is a reset. You can reset it after you've used it. If your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, this is in the graveyard, and it is a normal trap. So again, it halves their attack, negates their effects, can come back, triggers Sarah. If you need to, you can target Sarah to extend, and Sarah won't lose her effects. So yes, very nice effects going on there. 1 copy of Metaverse because it's a normal, basically the normal trap version of your terraforming. Can also activate the card if you really need to activate Metaverse, or if you're in a real pinch that you need to activate a normal trap, you just play Metaverse, you tutor the Mystic Mine, and then you get Sarah's effect off, which can always be really good. And rounding off the deck with 2 Solemn Judgment. If you want to bump up to 3 Judgment, you can. There's so many cards here you could cut. You could cut the Bottomless, you could cut one of the compulsors, anything like that. It's perfectly fine. Moving on to the extra deck, starting off, of course, 3 copies of Traptrix Sarah. I haven't stopped talking about her since we started this deck profile, because if you've seen the previous Traptrix deck profile I did, or anyone else's Traptrix deck profile, they'll tell you that Sarah is essentially the entire deck at this point. So while she's on the field, what's Link Summon card is unaffected by trap effects, and of course, I should mention that all the main deck Traptrix monsters are unaffected by whole normal traps. She has 2 effects. Her first effect is whenever a Traptrix monster activates its effect, you can set a whole normal trap card from your deck. You can't use it the turn you set it, unfortunately. Her other effect is if a normal trap card is activated, you can special summon a Traptrix monster from your deck. Now, both of these effects are hard once per turn, but that last effect is very, very important because it says if a normal trap is activated. So if your opponent uses one too, instead of you or before you do, you get a plus off that as well. And of course, like I said, being able to be unaffected by trap cards and trap effects means she can't be affected by infinite permanents. She can't be affected by our own traps if we need to, just to get that extension. She's an absolutely fantastic Link 1 monster, and her summoning condition is 1 Traptrix monster, so definitely not too hard to get on the field. The negative side is she does only have 800 attack, so a lot of times our opponents will just beat over her by normal summoning, which is why the trap holes are very important. It's why Floodgate works so well in this deck. Next up, we have 2 copies of the new Traptrix Link monster, Traptrix Curlaria. So she's a link to 1800 with link arrows to bottom to middle, bottom middle, and middle right. So you can only use her second and third effects hard once per turn. Much like Sarah, if she's been link summoned, she's unaffected by trap effects. When your activated whole normal trap card resolves, you can set it face down instead of sending it to the graveyard. Of course, you can't reuse it, but you don't have to worry about it going to the graveyard, which is really, really great. And during the end phase, you can target a Traptrix monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position. So essentially, she's kind of like an upgraded form version of Dioneia, but still really, really nice. A lot of the time, you probably won't make her. You're definitely making Sarah, but this card is definitely good enough that you do want to be running 2 copies of it in your pure build. Next up, we have 1 copy of the OG Traptrix boss monster, Traptrix Rafflesia. I am playing a pure deck. If you really want to run 2 Rafflesia, you can. I think I barely make her now, but we're playing a Traptrix deck, and I couldn't play Traptrix without playing Rafflesia. So she's 2 level 4 monsters while she's on the field. While she has an XYZ material, she's unaffected by trap effects, and your Traptrix monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is really cool. And she has an effect that you can detach and overlay a unit from her to mill a trap hole from your deck, and her effect becomes the trap holes effect. Now, what's interesting about this is it is treated as a monster effect, not the trap hole, not a normal trap, because she's copying it, but, you know, you don't have to run Rafflesia. You'll probably never make her, or the situations where you will make her are so niche. But she's definitely worth playing, especially if your opponent gets rid of her. You can bring her back in defense mode with both Dioneia and Kalaria. So she'll be in defense mode, 2500 body that they'll have to beat over, and she'll protect your monsters from being destroyed by card effects. So the protection is almost nicer at this point than being able to activate holes from your deck, because Sarah can just set them and the deck is a lot faster than her. But we're playing pure Traptrix, so we had to run at least 1. Speaking of pure Traptrix, yes, we're running 1 copy of Traptrix Almoranus. She's not great, but again, we're playing pure Traptrix, and it's 1 slot in the extra deck, so it's perfectly fine. So she requires 2 or more level 4 monsters, so you can build her up with multiple units if you want to. So her first effect is you can detach a material from her, 2 materials from her to special summon a level 4 insect or plant from your graveyard, so you can bring back any of your main deck Traptrix monsters. You can't bring back any of the extra deck ones, which is a little bit annoying, but I guess that's fine. The extra deck monsters do quite a lot, but at least all the monsters in our main deck have some effect if they're special summoned, or some utility while they're on the field. The exception of the new one, but she definitely does more than enough on her own to make up for that negative side. And then her second effect is if your opponent's monster or monsters leaves the field because of your card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, except during damage step, you can detach a material from her, then target one of them and special summon it. So it's a bit wordy, but essentially if you bottomless your opponent's monster and she's on the field, you can detach one and then you get the monster, basically, is what it does. It's a nice gimmicky effect, not really going to go off too much. Mostly you'll just use her if you've desired your double or nothing, you can use her to push for damage, detach 2, bring another Traptrix monster back, and then you have extra damage. So yes, you will make her. Ironically, I make her more than I make Rafflesia, which is saying a lot. But yeah, I mostly just use her as a beat stick, which is perfectly fine. Our finisher, of course, we have Utopia Double and Utopia. Pretty solid finisher for any level 4 deck. Yeah, pretty good. I know a lot of people hate losing to Utopia Double, but in this deck, we're going to floodgate our opponents, make Pentastag, make Utopia Double, smack for 10k piercing damage. Easy win, right? Most of the time. Babushka for stall, it's Earth. This is a stall deck. This is a control deck. Babushka can be used. You don't go into it as much as I used to, but still is definitely worth playing. Tornado Dragon, again, pretty much rank 4 superstar. MST on legs, really, really good. Especially because if the opponent has a way to negate our monster effects, we don't have too many ways to remove spell traps in the main deck. I mean, obviously we're citing Cosmic Cyclones as usual, but yeah, Tornado Dragon can be a really good way to get rid of cards that will negate our monster effects, or stop our monster effects activating. If they use that in response, of course, Cosmic Cyclones can always be a lot better. Abyss Dweller to shut down graveyards, another rank 4 superstar, depending on your matchup. Links that are not Traptrix links, Nightmare Phoenix, again, to remove back row. Feel free to swap this out for Nightmare Unicorn if you feel like you need to bounce cards. We have Pentest Tag. This is I love this card in this deck. Essentially gives Utopia Double piercing damage, so it can always help you win games. And then finally, 1 copy of Boral Sword. Again, swap it out for Borreload if you want to, just as another Link monster finish. But anyway, guys, that is it for the deck. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Remembering, of course, that the 2 new Traptrix monsters we took a look at that are in this deck are not out either in the TCG or the OCG yet. This is just my personal list of what I'm currently testing. What are you guys doing with your Traptrix deck? Do you play it pure? Do you think we're going to be getting a Traptrix field spell? I hope we do. I really want to take Mystic Mine out of the deck. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you for the next video.